Welcome to my presentation on the use and misuse of torture for intelligence gathering during the War on Terror. Today, I will be connecting this topic to critical criminology, which focuses on power, inequality, and state control. Throughout this presentation, I will examine how torture practices emerged, how they were justified, and what critical criminologists say about these actions. In this presentation, I will begin by explaining what critical criminology is. Then I will connect it to the use of torture in counterterrorism efforts. I'll provide historical context, define torture, explain how state power and social inequality contributed to these practices, and examine the relevant theories. Finally, I'll explore legal frameworks, modern implications, and conclude with key takeaways. Critical criminology looks at how power structures shape crime definitions, control strategies, and justice responses. It challenges traditional ideas that crime is only committed by individuals. Instead, it highlights how powerful institutions, including the state, can also commit harmful or illegal actions. This perspective helps us analyze government interrogation practices with a critical lens. After the 9/11 attacks, the U.S. government rapidly expanded counterterrorism operations. This included establishing CIA black sites and conducting interrogations under secrecy. The Abu Ghraib scandal revealed abusive treatment of detainees, sparking global outrage. This historical moment shows how fear and national security concerns shaped decisions that allowed torture to become normalized. Torture includes severe physical or psychological pain inflicted to gain information or compliance. Examples used during the War on Terror include waterboarding, stress positions, isolation, and sensory deprivation. These practices contradict international law, but were reframed as enhanced interrogation techniques. Understanding these definitions is important because the language used helped justify and hide abusive methods. From a critical criminology viewpoint, torture demonstrates the state's ability to exert extreme control over individuals. By claiming the need for national security, governments can override legal and moral boundaries. This highlights how powerful groups create exceptions to rules and avoid accountability when they believe it benefits them or maintains social order. Many detainees subjected to torture belong to specific racial, ethnic, and religious backgrounds, primarily Middle Eastern and Muslim men. These groups were quickly labeled as security threats. Critical criminologists argue that this reflects broader systems of inequity, where marginalized groups are more likely to be targeted and dehumanized by state actions. A major concept in critical criminology is state crime, the idea that governments can engage in harmful or illegal practices. Torture is an example of state crime because it violates international human rights laws. Yet, during the War on Terror, such actions were justified as necessary. Critical criminologists challenge this logic and call for accountability and oversight. Several criminological theories help explain torture practices. Conflict theory highlights how powerful groups control weaker ones. Labeling theory explains how detainees were reclassified as enemy combatants, allowing governments to bypass legal protections. Marxist criminology argues that states act to protect the interests of elites, sometimes through force. These theories show how torture became rationalized within the larger system of power. In summary, torture during the War on Terror demonstrates how states can use power in harmful ways, especially during crises. Critical criminology helps us recognize the deeper social inequalities and systematic issues driving these decisions. Understanding these factors is essential for preventing future abuses and ensuring ethical, transparent policies. This slide focuses on the international legal standards surrounding torture. Protections are outlined in documents like the UN Convention Against Torture and the Geneva Conventions. However, after 9/11, new legal interpretations were created to argue that certain interrogation methods didn't legally qualify as torture. These loopholes allowed governments to justify questionable practices while avoiding responsibility. Critical criminology pushes us to consider how policies should change to prevent abuses. This includes increasing transparency, strengthening oversight, and closing legal loopholes that allow torture under different names. Ethical and legal protections must be reinforced so that governments cannot rely on emerging rationales to justify harmful practices. Rebuilding trust in institutions also becomes essential. Even today, the debate over torture has not fully disappeared. Discussions about national security, human rights, and intelligence gathering methods continue. Some of the same narratives used in the early 2000s still appear in policy conversations. Critical criminology remains relevant because it helps us question how power is used, how people are labeled, and how state actions affect marginalized populations. These are the resources I used in my presentation, and this is my design statement. Thank you for listening.